Okay, so why talking about CSS now? We want to introduce CSS into our code. What we have done so far, what we have done so far, uh, what we have done so far, we have it here. I have too many tabs here. Let me close. I'm done with this. Done with that. Yeah, voila. What we what we have done so far, we have this. So far we have this, and now we want to introduce CSS into uh, to unbelief. Frenchman say unbelief, for it to beautify what we have done so far, so that it give it some form. Now, for us to do that, we need to start with CSS selectors. CSS selector is how you name your elements here in HTML. So you might hear me talking interchanging HTML tag, HTML element. Just know that I'm talking about the same thing. So the first thing here, we can just come. There are three main types of CSS selectors. You have the tag name, like here you have the header, you have the tag name, you have an ID, which I do not avoid anybody to actually doing CSS, writing CSS using IDs. You're using ID mostly when you're doing JavaScript. You have an ID, then you have a class name, which is what most of the time we are using either head element tag name or a class. That is the most ones that I use. ID, I do not advise you to use ID because it will complicate it. It makes your code unreusable. It makes your CSS unreusable. And you just remember I said, if you can remember, I said your code has to be dry, which means do not repeat yourself in your. Now, there's a naming convention that I usually teach that I'll prefer using it like this. So, like if you see like on your website, there's high probability that if you have a rich website, all the headers are going to have the same style. So instead of coming here again and giving it uh, a class name, you can just decide that at the level of your CSS, at the level of your CSS, okay, you're just going to use the header, the name header. So when you're using a tag name, you just write by the tag. Just write the tag name like that in CSS, then you put in your curly bracket. At this point in time, you can style. You can start styling. Let me just try. Let's test if our CSS is linked. Background color, let me put antique, but that's antique white. If I can pronounce that. So we have done this. Refresh and see if the color changes. It means that our CSS is connected. Okay, there's been no change. First thing I check is the spelling. Have we linked our CSS to HTML? That's the first check to do. When I look at it here, CSS normally supposed to be in the head. Remember, I told you that the head is where you give instructions on where the body, on how the content in the body is supposed to display. So we don't have any content there. I'm going to come. We don't have any link that is going to CSS there. So I'll make a link, and this link is going to CSS. You know that our CSS inside the CSS folder slash main dot CSS. We have linked it. We refresh. The color changes. It means that it is now connected. Okay, now we have connected our CSS. The next thing is that this logo is bigger than what is supposed to be. It's too big. So I can come now to HTML. I look at it here. This is the element that is giving me that logo, because the logo is normally just an image. Now, one thing I did not specify, I did not specifically specify, is that when giving CSS selectors, you are giving it to the opening tag of an element, because most elements have an opening and a closing tag. So you give it back to the opening tag. But when you look at the image tag, for instance, it is a self-closing tag. It's called a singleton in French, called self-closing tag. So there's no opening and closing. So you just need to give that class at the beginning of the tag. You give it a space. Now I'll say class. I'm using class logo because I know that there might be other places in my website that I will call logo. I can have logo here at the top. I have logo in the footer. I have logo some other place again. So that's why I use the class logo. So I use logo here. I come to CSS. When now it is a class name, instead of just writing the name logo, I have to say dot. Then I say logo. I put in the curly bracket. Now, the first thing I want is to make it round so that we don't have all of these black starch here. So the CSS rule, in CSS, in HTML we talk of HTML element, in CSS we talk of CSS rules. The CSS rule that makes something round is the border radius. And if you want to make something a perfect circle, you have to make sure that the thing is a square. When looking at this logo, I know it is a square. It's a square. So I will make it a perfect circle so much that it will just take, see just the logo that will be there. So border radius, I'll say 50%. Right? You see, right? I'll say border radius 50%. It has made it a perfect circle, but it is still very big. As it's big like that, I can now reduce the height and width. But while reducing the height and width, I have to also make sure that it is proportional. It means that they have to be the same. If I say here that 80 pixels for the height, I'm making sure that the width too is 80 pixels. Because if it's not, let me just show you what happens if it's not 80 pixels. Let me put the width here, 50 pixels. If we refresh, you see now it's oblong, right? It has become an
Yes.
eclipse. There is an eclipse, not more a circle. So I have to put it at 80. I refresh. Now you have a circle. That's it. After that, we are looking according to our mockup. We have this nav here, which has to come in the center. While this other button is on the left. How do we achieve that? Given that this is our CSS, this is our HTML here, we have the header. Inside header has three children. The first one is the image, the second one the nav, and the third one the button. If we want these things side by side, like in horizontally, there are many ways to do that, but the method that we are going to be looking at is going to be the method from the flexbox. Flexbox, we are going to work a lot on flexbox because I prefer the explanation from CSS Tricks. They do it very well. They explain flexbox very well. You can always visit their website if you don't understand. So what flexbox does is that when give a container, in our case here we are talking about parent element. When you give a container or a parent element the property, the rule of flexbox, what happens is that its children become flexible. You can now move them using rules that are only available with the flex box properties. Like you can have, when you say display flex on element, now you have access to the direction, flex direction, as you can see here. You can say flex, this is the normal flex direction here. So you have flex direction row, which is this. You have row reverse. You have column, and then column reverse. We are going to work on these other classes. But here we are going to go deeper in other classes. Here we are just going to use it so that you see what happens. So for best practices when using Flexbox. When you most of the times you'll be using the row. You just say row here, say dot row, because you're creating the CSS class. I say dot row here because we are going to use it several times, and I'll say display flex. When I say display flex here, I come to HTML and I identify this parent, this nav here. I give it a class row. I give it a class row. This is the first time you are okay. We have used logo here. You saw that here we just wrote logo. Here we are writing. We say class logo, and this sign here in the middle here. This equals to sign. In programming, it is no longer equals to. It's called an assignment. Assignment means you take what is on the right, you put it inside what is on the left. If you want an equal to sign in programming is double. So you have double equals to like that. That at that point in time you're saying that okay, what is on the right, you're checking if what is on the right is equal to what is on the left. But if you have just one, the instruction you're passing is that take what is on the right and put it inside what is on the left. So we have just it, but when we are in CSS, we are putting dot. This one now tells the CSS that in HTML, logo is a class. HTML, row is a class. So as we are giving row there, if we come now and refresh what we have here, see that I've entered the same line. But now it has touched the button. See that the button is stretched. Button is stretched by default to take the height of the logo. Those are some things we are going to see how to solve them. Now, but the main thing is that let's first of all get this space that we have. When we look at our mockup, see that there's some space here and there's some space here. And then, so the way you get that is by looking at the CSS, at the flex properties here, which I will also, there's going to be a lot of assignment there. I don't know how you, there's a lot of work. Okay. When you give an element the flex, when you make elements to become flexible, you have access to this justify content here. And this justify content, or before Flexbox came, what justify content is doing here, before Flexbox, it was really crazy. It was very difficult to do. At times, it was easier using, you just put in a table, create a table to have stuff like this. But now, with Flexbox, things have become much more. So now you have flex start, elements by default are in flex start, flex end, flex start, flex is. As I said, we are going to go into Flexbox digitally in another class. What we are going to do is space around. We're going to use the space around. Reason being that we can use it and it doesn't solve our problem, we come back. Reason being that when you look at it, there's some space here. There's some space here. These two spaces are equal, but they are smaller than these ones in the middle. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Okay. So what we do, we are going to come to still at the level of parent element. Most of the times, Flexbox elements are at the level of parent element. I'm going to create a class, justify. I will just say space around. Are you seeing where I'm naving? I'll say justify. I put hyphen, space. I put hyphen around. If I remove this space, this hyphen there, and just leave space like that, the way the browser is going to read it, in this case we are calling the browser our interpreter. The way it's going to interpret it is going to be that okay, there's a class called justify, there's another class called space, and there's another class called around. Because look at when I wrote row here and I want to add this, I just gave the space. So when you just leave a space here, it's going to take this as a class, this as a class, this as a class. For you to make that this is one element, link it with a hyphen like this. You understand it, right?
Yes, sir.
So I'll copy this class. I copy this class at the level of CSS. So best practices, what I usually do, I comment here, say here that this is my flexbox. You know what a comment is, right?
Yes, yes. I know actually what the comment is.
Okay. I'm just commenting here that to say that this is where the CSS for flexbox stands, so that I can easily find my way around. Then I'll put justify content here, curly bracket. In here, I'll say justify content, and I'll give it the value space around. So if I come now, if you come now and refresh, you see what has happened now. This logo now is here on the left. This guy is on in center. While this here is on right. That's basically what has happened. So the next thing now would be to handle these guys for them to have space amongst them. As it was, they were inline elements. It's just easy. I can still, as an inline element that just anchor, I can say, I can give them a class, and I can still, like, yes, let's just give a class, just so that you understand how it works. That's not what. I'll give it a class. I'll call it menu item. Menu item like that. At times this copying it helps to put it up here. Menu items. Copying helps because when you go typing and you make a typo, counts a problem too.
What if you write a menu item under?
What
Would there
if
be a problem?
I wrote it under where? Under here?
Yes.
No, there will not be a problem. But I always prefer that, because Flexbox is going to have a lot of code. You see, what I usually do is that I would prefer that the way your HTML appears here, right, to make sure
Yes.
your CSS appears the same way too, so that it's easier for you. Maybe 6 months after, when you come back to your thing, when you look at an element here, maybe you can have 1,000 lines of HTML here, 1,000 line. When you look at an element, you see that maybe you're around 500. You're looking, when you come to CSS, when you see another element, you're trying to figure out where the CSS is. I would like that your CSS to follow the same order in which the HTML. You try as much as possible, because it's not possible. It's not possible to actually make it perfectly the same. But you try that CSS that do the same thing find themselves basically around the same spot. Like you see, all of this CSS here is handling the header. Is the children of header that we are handling here. So let the CSS just be together. If I put it down, it will not disturb. But it's better I just put it together. It helps me if I come back to my code some other time and I want to edit something on it. Okay, when I look at this, these elements, I can use a margin amongst them, margin left and right to give some space. I can say top and bottom 0, like that. Left and right, I say 20 pixels. Directly is going to space them a little bit. See, spaces them like that. Now, it is starting from, you guys do not have like the height. Wait, let's confirm something. You see what I was saying, that is stretched now. You see, as apparent the nav itself is stretched. Look at nav is stretched. This is how HTML elements by default behave. Most of the times they stretch to take the height of their siblings. The only element that we give a height to is this logo, right? Give a height to this logo. Now these other elements are stretching to get that, be on the same height with them. You can come and forcefully give them a height. If it doesn't, like this button will be forced to give it a height so that it's not stretched. Or we look at other ways to make sure that it's not stretched. I'll look into that CSS again. That we prevent this from being stretched, as it is like this. So now here, you could also decide now and bring these things to the center. But now, why just writing this? I'm seeing that, oh, it will be easier for me to use Flexbox, although they are already aligned horizontal like this. There are some things that it will be easier for me to use Flexbox to achieve, like these elements here. I would like them to be here in the center. I would like them to just be centered here, somewhere around here like that. And I'm seeing that it will be more easier with Flexbox, because aligning elements vertically in the center is very, very complicated. Why? Because elements by default, as I told you, take the height of their content. So if the height of this header keeps growing, or this guy changes in height, it means the center has changed. If you and you need to recalculate it. That's what I'm saying. That if, like, for instance, if I come, let me just show you what I'm saying. I come here to nav here. I give it a class. I give it row, although they're already in row. But if I give you row now, if we refresh, there's been a change, but not big one. I can remove now this margin that we have here. I can remove this margin and instead put gap. I can still put gap 20. It will almost do the same thing. Very safe. Gap. Ooh, I'm forgetting. My head is clocking. Let me put it back. Let me put it. I think gap has to go to the parent. Let me see. I've not called nav here yet. Nav. Then I give this gap to the parent. It works because we have given. Let me check if that is having the yeah. Why is it not working? These are things like this that happens, that gives you thinking. I'm thinking, one, is it because these things are inline elements? How do I check if that might be the case? I'm just going to wrap LIs here. Let's wrap LIs here. I want to check and see if this is happening because these elements are inline elements. LI. I'll copy this. I have to copy from here. I'm just wrapping them under LI, and wrapping under inside LI, I would have also make a UL. See, it becomes complicated. That's why I said it is much more easier for you when you sit down and think, because this is something that we should have thought of it before. Most of the times I usually make a UL and I put them inside an LI. Does it solve my issue? It solves my issue, you see. So the reason it was not giving that space there is because these elements were inline elements. You understand, right? That's why
Yes.
I took time again to explain to you that there's inline element, that block elements, and that inline block elements. I think I will do a video and demonstrate that, because as you have seen, just this small thing here, because those elements were inline, it was not following the flexbox rule, you see. So it happens like that. That's why I keep saying that it is more important to know know what these things can do, can apply on what element, so that it helps you issues like, because imagine I did not think of it that, oh, this behavior is like this because these elements are in line. We will be trying all sort, we might force it to work and it works, but whereas the solution is just there. Means that as I'm putting this UI, I've put li here like this. The next thing that actually I have to do is that I have to wrap it in a UL and on other list. Means I have to wrap all of this in a UL like that. And when I'm doing this like this, I'm thinking again, it's kind of like I'm having too many HTML elements which are solving the same problem. So there are things that you keep on thinking and you look for better solutions on how to do it. Like, okay, I'm looking at this now. I'm saying that, okay, yeah, I wanted to make a HTML semantics here by writing nav, but I'm seeing that I'm using a UL here, and then I'm having an LI here again. So I have these two HTML elements that are coming in. Maybe is there a way to eliminate them? Is there a better way to do it? Those are the type of things that you're thinking, so that your code, when it runs on the browser, it is pretty fast. So this is the type of question now that you can copy now something like this. Go to ChatGPT and you explain that this is the issue I'm having. Is there a better way to do it, that I will not be having a UL and an LI here, of which like the UL is almost doing the same job like the nav, because it's a parent element. Having a parent element is another parent element, which I'm not seeing any problem that it is solving. So it's things like this now that you can go with ChatGPT or AI to open your mind and understanding on it. Okay. I don't want to give you too much information today. So I think we'll stop here, and then I would like you to reproduce something like this. You do something like this, then you take this image and put it here on the right. Means that you will reproduce this on your own. The image should be on the right. That's possible, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You do that before I keep on adding, because adding is sweet. The most important thing is that you
Actually, I was
understand.
trying. Actually, if I could even have a video of this course so that I can try to reproduce it, because right now, if I
Okay.
get up right tomorrow, today, tomorrow, it will be a little bit tougher.
Yes, I think I started recording. So I have the recording here. I'll send the recording to you.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Okay, good night, sir.